Good morning, ladies.
I do.
Why, you're Miss Cooper, I think.
It's about that John and that Pearl.
Oh, them poor little lambs. To think I never hope to see them again in this world. Oh, dear madam, if you was to know what a crown of thorns I've borne in my search for them strayed chicks.
Ruby, go fetch them kids.
Oh, madam, I see you're looking at my hands. Would you like me to tell you the little story of left hand and right hand, the tale of good and evil? It was with this left hand that old brother Cain struck the blow that laid his brother low.
Them kids is yours?
My own flesh and blood.
Where's your missus?
She run off with a drummer during prayer meeting.
Where's she at?
Down the river, Summers, Parkersburg, maybe Cincinnati, one of them Sodoms of the Ohio River.
She took them kids with her?
Oh, heaven only knows what unholy sights and sounds them innocent little babes has heard in the dens of perdition where she dragged them.
Right funny, ain't it, how they rode all the way upriver in a 10-foot John boat?
Are they well, Miss Cooper?
A sight better than they was.
Gracious, gracious, you are a good woman, Miss Cooper.
How you figuring to raise them two without a woman?
Oh, the Lord will provide. The Lord is merciful. No, what a day this is. And there's little John.
What's wrong, John?
Come to me, boy.
What's wrong, John?
Didn't you hear me, boy?
John, when your dad says come, you should mind him.
He ain't my dad.
No, and he ain't no preacher neither.
A modern-day remake of Matthew Vaughn's Lay a Kick, a Coen brothers stand up with Timothy Chalamet. A Citizen Kane prequel, a Midnight Cowboy sequel, Alvin and the Chipmunks deserve another squeakquel. There's so many new ways to revisit sideways, but a graphic novel is how we choose to update. But we still hold fast, you can't change the past on the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, starfighters, coal miners, and leaping frogs. This is Ruined Childhoods, and on this episode, we are in the Mountain State on our cinematic trek across America. This state has had 3 slogans: wild and wonderful, open for business, and almost heaven. This state is the birthplace of game show host and comedian Steve Harvey, pilot Chuck Yeager, and actor Robert V. Barron, who played Abraham Lincoln in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, as well as television shows Love American Style, Out of This World, and Get a Life. Speaking of Honest Abe, he was the president who admitted the state to the Union in 1863. Perhaps President Lincoln tasted a golden delicious apple, which was first found in this state. Or maybe he sat under the world's largest sycamore tree, found in this state. Or perhaps he smelled a rhododendron, the state's flower. That's right, we're in West Virginia talking about the 1955 thriller Night of the Hunter. Dan, did you know that there's a town in West Virginia called Ghent, named to commemorate the Treaty of Ghent, which ended the War of 1812?
I did not know that, John. Thank you for sharing that with me. Wow.
Information.
Well, and for those who are new to the program here and have not heard us mention the city of Ghent before, we're usually talking about the city of Ghent in Belgium,
Yes,
where my wife is from and where my wedding happened 12 years ago, and a city that I've actually been to, as compared to Ghent, West Virginia, of which I was not aware until moments ago.
It's the Treaty of Ghent, rather than the West Virginia Ghent.
Right. Yes. It's the Ghent of the Treaty of Ghent rather than the Ghent memorialized by the Ghent. You know what I mean? The Treaty of Ghent, which the city of Ghent in West Virginia is.
Maybe we can all take a family pilgrimage to Ghent, West Virginia sometime, check out the local fair, see what life is like there.
Yeah, no, I bet it's exactly the same as Ghent, Belgium, except not.
Oh, like a little fairy tale city with castles and a river running through it, and that kind of stuff. Yeah, waffles, French fries.
In West Virginia, yes, a city that it clearly looks like it was used as the inspiration for like a Disney village.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure in the middle of West Virginia. I mean, maybe there is. I've never been to West Virginia. I don't know.
Yeah, do you have any background with West Virginia? I mean, you just said you've never been there, but what do you know of West Virginia?
what do I know of West Virginia is that it is west of Virginia.
Ooh, interesting.
And I know, like, you know, it's the pop culture connections and, you know, coal miner's daughter and things like that. We also, our Uncle Dennis, who our faithful listeners would remember from multiple past episodes, most notably our Sister Act episode, because he was an extra in that.
Well, yeah, and he actually was on that episode at the very end. We had a little chat with him about his experience on Sister Act.
Right. And we could have him talking about his experience in West Virginia, which is where he went to college and did media studies. And dipped his toe into the broadcast journalism world. Would have been great to chat with him for our broadcast news episode. That is an opportunity missed, but maybe we can do a follow-up sometime. Although that was quite some time ago. We'll see what he can remember from that time. He's got a pretty solid memory. I'm sure he remembers. He's got a pretty solid memory, and whatever he doesn't remember, I'm sure he'll just fill in the blanks because he's also a pretty creative storyteller.
He's a very creative storyteller, and we love him very much. We had the pleasure of spending some time with him recently. We were all at a family wedding for another past guest, our brother Scott.
Yes.
We were all in New York together. That was so much fun. Really great to hang out. And certainly I could have brought microphones and we could have talked about Night of the Hunter there, but we had more important things to do.
Yeah. Yes. No. And besides, there would, like, now we can, the wedding is past, our travels are done, and we can focus here on the Night of the Hunter.
We sure can. Dan, what is your knowledge of the Night of the Hunter?
So if I'm remembering correctly, my first introduction to this film was in a high school class, Film as an Art Form, by the late great Ed Roberts, who taught that, and I've also spoken about him before. Yes. But in that class, I think it was talking about like the film noir, and talking about like the use of light in films. I remember it was very cinematography based, and I remember the sequence where like the kids are running along the riverside.
Yeah.
What I remembered about the movie was Robert Mitchum as a scary, like, con man posing as a preacher, chasing these two kids because of money.
Yeah.
And I remembered that Shelley Winters was, like, I might have watched this movie 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. When I was watching it now, there were some things that were familiar to me. There are also elements of this movie that have inspired other movies.
Oh,
since.
Totally.
So, and outside of that, pop culture, as we'll talk about, Robert Mitchum's character has the words hate and love tattooed on his fingers.
Oh, I meant to give myself knuckle tattoos.
You were going to do the knuckle tattoos for this?
Yeah.
Oh, that's commitment.
Oh, I forgot. Well, I wasn't going to like get tattoos. I was going to Sharpie or just pen pig them on. But
that's still commitment. But and the hate and also like, so a movie that's going to come up naturally here is Cape Fear.
Yeah.
Because which comes after this, but it's Robert Mitchum again in this like stalky, creepy role. He plays Max Cady in Cape Fear, the role that De Niro later played. But also, I think didn't De Niro have hate and love on his fingers?
I believe so. I mean, he had a lot of tattoos. So I think that because he had so many tattoos and maybe it was a little less noticeable, but like to see somebody with knuckle tattoos in 1955 really stands out.
Right.
Although, dang, you know what would be really cool with knuckle tattoos?
In 1955?
No, I'm asking you, do you know what I think would be really cool knuckle tattoos?
Oh, what? Right
Cape
and left?
Fear.
Okay.
No, because right is too many letters. You need 4 and 4.
Oh, I was saying RITE. No, he's got... Oh, yeah. So I'm not sure if it was Cape Fear that he's got the love and hate, but also
it was Meet the Fockers
again,
and Little
what's
Fockers. He ggets him in Meet the Fockers, and then we see him again in Little Fockers.
Oh. The other character that I'm thinking of, who I'm pretty sure had those tattoos. Maybe I'm wrong as I'm Google imaging. I cannot find the pictures I'm looking for, but if I remember correctly, the late pro wrestler Bray Wyatt.
Okay.
Wyndham Rotunda. And Bray Wyatt's character was very much like a preacher type who there's definitely the echoes of Harry Powell in the character of Bray Wyatt, who, sadly the performer passed away last year, but he's, like his character was really stood out in that sense, and he was similar, also very similar to Max Cady, the performance of more of De Niro, really, but still the idea of knuckle tattoos and that whole thing. Yeah, I don't know before 1955 where you would have seen that.
Well, when you go to like the Wikipedia page for knuckle tattoos, it cites this movie as being like an early like notable appearance of knuckle tattoos. And it, I think that in, sailor culture, it is likely to have been a thing, but, at least in terms of like, mass pop culture, this is really the first time you're probably seeing something like that. Yeah.
And it's a significant part of it's part of his character and it's part of his gimmick.
Yeah. Oh, no, it makes a lot of sense. Well, why don't we synopsize? And so for anybody who hasn't seen Night of the Hunter, I'm going to try to avoid spoilers because it's something that, you should definitely check out if you haven't seen it. And it's likely that, maybe you haven't seen it. I don't think that it's considered, or it doesn't really get named as much as being one of those like iconic thrillers, but it really, I think, should be. I was really blown away when I watched it. It's a gorgeous movie, and it's really sets itself apart from so many others like it.
It's one that you will often see on the lists of filmmakers.
Yeah.
Films that inspired them. So, and it when it came out, yeah, it didn't do very well when it came out. It was more like after the fact, I think when people started to cite it as an influence that it kind of started to pick up this reputation that it has.
Yeah.
But please let's hear about the plot.
A demonic thief and murderer masquerading as a man of the cloth will stop at nothing to track down the $10,000 stolen by his recently executed cellmate. Reverend Harry Powell, I should put Reverend in quotes, Reverend Harry Powell finds his way to the small West Virginia town where the cash is hidden to find his cellmate's kids, John and Pearl, and his widowed wife, Willa. He makes quick work of endearing himself to the townsfolk who encourage Willa to marry him and have a suitable situation for John and Pearl. But before the chime of the wedding bells have a chance to finish ringing, Harry has already shown his true colors to Willa. He believes that fornication's only purpose is to create more children, and since she is done having kids, Harry has no use for her body. This eventually leads to Willa's mysterious disappearance, and her location happens to be at the bottom of a lake. Now that Harry Powell is the sole parent to John and Pearl, he attempts to coerce them to give up the location of the hidden money. They manage to escape and travel downstream from town to town in an effort to get away from him. When they encounter Rachel Cooper, their situation seems to improve. Rachel takes in lost orphans and raises them as her own, showing them kindness and teaching them about religion and the ways of the world. But when Harry finds John and Pearl, Rachel rallies the troops and defends them against the horrid man who won't back down. No, I won't back down. Sorry, I didn't plan on evoking Tom Petty there, but
You could
Robert
drag him
Mitchum,
down to the gates of hell.
yeah, seriously. Robert Mitchum is Harry Powell, as we mentioned. Shelley Winters is Willa. Lillian Gish, silent film phenomenon, maybe the first movie star, is Rachel Cooper. The namesake for the Smashing Pumpkins album, Gish. So,
Every time I hear Lillian Gish, though, I just think of the Three Amigos and Martin Short telling the story. Was it Lillian Gish or Dorothy Gish?
oh, I don't remember.
It's one of the Gish sisters. It might actually be Dorothy, but when he's telling the villagers his story about like Lillian Gish or Dorothy Gish, you seeing him perform and like giving him like a very vague compliment.
Got it.
Classic,
Got it.
Classic Martin Short.
Classic Martin Short.
And that's the last time we'll be talking about Martin Short on this episode.
Ooh, I don't know. Challenge accepted. Billy Chapin is John Harper, who is, I would say, like, he should get billing alongside Robert Mitchum at the top there. That kid really carries this thing. Sally Jane Bruce is Pearl Harper, the girl who isn't quite able to say her own name. Pearl. She says it really strangely.
Yeah, she's
Pearl.
Interesting accent.
Yeah. But the kids are, they're great. They're very, very strong. Directed by Charles Laughton, the only film directed by Charles Laughton. Actor on stage and screen, also directed theater, and it's very clear that there's a lot of theater influence.
Definitely. And it's actually, so, and we'll still talk about the, we'll come back to this, but the theatrical influence is definitely something I wanted to kind of ask and get your thoughts about. But also in the cast, we've got Shelley Winters.
Oh, did I not mention Shelley Winters? I thought I did.
No.
Willa?
I feel like it would have. Well, yeah. I mean, you mentioned Willa, but yeah. So Shelley Winters is in this, and she's one of those actresses who I feel like one of the first like movies that I watched was Pete's Dragon.
Oh,
which she's in. So I like. There's this Shelley Winters kind of image in my head, but also of the Poseidon Adventure. She gave a great performance in the Poseidon Adventure, and then another movie from 1962, because the original Cape Fear came out in 1962. Another movie that came out in 1962 that has an actor from Night of the Hunter kind of playing some similar beats. She's in Lolita and plays the mother of Lolita, who gets charmed into marrying this guy. She's clearly like, I don't want to say desperate, but she's definitely like under pressure to get married. So she gets married to James Mason's character, Humbert in Lolita. And then of course it results in her character's death. Yeah. As it does in this, is more accidentally in Lolita.
Yeah.
Though, it's really interesting to see her in this film, and she's
talking about, Willa in this. It's so heartbreaking because she didn't really want to marry this guy. She just got like pressured into it, and I feel so bad for her because it's just like, man, this girl can't catch a break. Her original husband goes off, robs a bank, and kills some cops. Is that what happened? Kills people.
We don't know who he goes. That's played by Peter Graves.
Right, Peter Graves. I mean, he's only in the first scene, but he's very good.
Well, early role for Peter Graves. Yeah. Well, yeah, and you're kind of like, you get the impression that whatever he did, I don't know, for me it was like the impression was like, yeah, he did this robbery, but it was probably for good reason or good like motivation.
Well,
I got that sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Depression era. There's
Yeah.
Nobody has any money, and he is doing it knowing that he's going to get busted. But he's essentially just like, you know what? As long as my son is able to take care of my wife and daughter, then I'll be in good shape. So, or at least I can, die happy knowing that, things are taken care of. I mean, he doesn't speak kindly of Willa. He kind of calls her a bit flighty, but leaves it to his 8-year-old son to hold it together and hide the money and everything. And he does.
Responsible kid.
He's great.
Responsible kid. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a really good kid, and major credit to the actor Billy Chapin, especially for a kid at that time to do a role like this and to really sell it. I mean, that's kind of amazing. You don't see a lot of that kind of stuff happening in 1955. It's a very intense character and a very intense movie, and you got to put a lot of trust in the filmmakers, and
the modern day parallel to me would be like Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense.
Sure. Yeah.
Something like that, where a kid is really handling a deep, complex,
completely capable.
It only it's interesting. This movie just takes some interesting twists and turns. One of them involving John, when, I guess, spoiler alert,
Spoiler alert.
Literally with the sirens, because when Powell is arrested, it triggers, you see something that I don't know in 1955 how many people were going to pick up on this, but it triggers the trauma he had from seeing his father arrested.
Sure.
And it was really, to me, it was just really interesting to see this kind of nuanced, portrayal of trauma.
Right.
And have that moment, which was really I rewound a little bit and was just like, did I miss something? Why is he?
Yeah, there's
upset?
there's an embrace that he gives, and it's uncharacteristic, and certainly it makes you wonder what is going on with this poor child. And
he calls him dad. He calls him dad.
Well, and I mean, he is technically his stepdad.
Right. But you don't, but he doesn't, that was why I hit the rewind button, was kind of what happened? Because John does not like this guy, period. From the jump. And why is he all of a sudden upset about him being arrested? And then I was thinking back to the beginning of the movie, the way that they have his father pressed down to the ground. It's the same. So that's how I kind of had to put it together. But again, I don't know how many people are making those connections, especially in 1955. But we know that people were thinking about it because it's part of this script, and it's a part of the story, because then John he goes silent.
Right.
He doesn't speak. He won't speak when he's testifying in court. Yeah.
Really fascinating, because you don't have to do that, and it's still a great movie, but it makes it a more complex story to tell when you do have something like that. Yeah.
Well, and it makes it, and maybe I'm trying to remember correctly, but in the end, doesn't Powell end up getting lynched by the citizens?
I don't remember, because I watched it a few weeks ago. But yeah, I mean, I know there's definitely lots of public hangings.
Well, the citizens of the town start to riot when Rachel is in the little ice cream parlor or whatever, the little whatever soda shop, and they're all oh, and then next thing you know, they're taking furniture out of the cafe. It's what are they doing? Yeah. But then they're marching to the jailhouse, and they're oh boy, they're really and then I I don't remember the resolution, like what happened with Powell, because then it just kind of cuts to later.
Yeah, I think that's an issue with a lot of these kind of earlier movies is they, you know, in a lot of cases when there's so much so much beef earlier on in the movie, the end, gets kind of neglected a little bit. And not to say that that makes it a bad movie by any means, but it's just like, all right, we're done,
Oh, they take him out of the back of the prison.
Right. I do remember that.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's very ambiguous what actually ends up happening to him. And yeah, you don't know if he's caught, or you don't know if he ends up being hung.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think that Harry genuinely believes that he is, I don't know, acting on behalf of his religion? Or do you really think that it's all just for show to con people? Because he's very educated, and he knows a lot of the like hymns and scripture and things like that. So I don't know. I'm just kind of curious to know what you think.
I think there's like mental illness.
Sure.
Because he is in the scene, I guess introductory scene to him, where he's just driving along, like he's having a conversation, like he's hearing voices. And if I remember correctly, there's a few other moments in the film where he's hearing the voices. And
yeah,
I think to him, and, it's been, documented that, a lot of people who have had, various untreated mental illnesses, especially, at least 100 years ago, when, we didn't know much, and people put a lot more stock in religion, which also has that the stock that people put in religion has a big role to play in this film as well. But a lot of people just thought that they were being spoken to by the divine, God, the devil, angels, demons, whatever. So I actually do think that he believes it, because there's other things he does in the movie that are like, this is not a cold, calculated criminal. This is somebody who is being influenced, and who is not entirely sane.
Sure. And it's kind of sad that the thing that's motivating him is just money.
And that's the other thing. What does he need the money for?
Right. This is somebody who doesn't live by the standards that are kind of set out before him. He lies and cheats and steals his way through life. And what's $10,000 really going to do for him? Well, he is a convincing man who can wriggle his way into the lives of others. And it's like, couldn't that just be enough?
And he's done it before. What do they say? 25 times?
Yeah, that's right.
That he's like married and killed 25 women. Yeah. And I mean, I guess the money is just to keep this going, to keep this whole charade going. So, I mean, the whole, does he really believe it? I guess that's a tough question, but usually if I'm watching a movie and I see a scene where a character is like definitely alone and they're doing something, it makes me think less that like, oh, it's to put on an act. Because then I think it's just kind of like shoddy writing, because you're just doing it for exposition and you're just having a character talk to themselves.
Yeah.
For the sake of exposition.
I think that what you said before, mental illness makes a lot of sense and is very clear. It's almost like if there is anything spiritual or, religiously charged going on, it's that he is being influenced by the devil, but in a way that he's convinced that, he's on a mission from God, and that's kind of what he's setting out to do. I mean, if there was any type of explanation of like why he needs $10,000, if it's to build a church or,
he's on a mission from God. It's probably to save the orphanage where he grew up in Chicago. That's
right. Of course that would be it.
So again, the Blues Brothers influenced by Night of the Hunter.
Yes.
At least we know what they needed the money for.
So but Robert Mitchum, just amazing, such a scary dude. And on our last episode we talked about broadcast news, and there's the kind of speech that Albert Brooks gives about the devil, and he's just like, he's not going to be a red guy with horns and a pointy tail. Like, he's going to be charming and he's going to look like the rest of us. And it's a little different from what Albert Brooks says, because he says like he's not going to harm anybody. In this case, he certainly does harm people, but that speech is about he's going to lower our standards. But in this one, it's a very literal, like, it's the devil in disguise. It's the wolf in sheep's clothing. It's, this person who's just set out to cause chaos.
Well, and I think that's where the setting is important, because you have West Virginia, very rural. People are not as, like, there's definitely community connection. We like the ice cream shop and everything. So, it was funny because when I saw that it was called Spoons, I was like, I didn't realize they had like clever, like, scoops. Or my favorite yogurt shop name, Bohemian Raspberry.
Oh my God.
But I'm sorry, I lost my
You were thinking about Bohemian Raspberry.
I was thinking about Bohemian Raspberry, yeah. But the fact that, but then, like, the woman's name is Icy Spoon, who owns the place, and it's actually, that's their name. But anyway, getting back to the point, they're disconnected. But what do these people all have? Religion, church. It's a very religious people. I don't know that it's necessarily considered the Bible Belt there, but
no,
still people who put a lot of stock in religion. And what I like about this movie is that you see how Powell uses that against people, uses them to be that wolf in sheep's clothing, but also how Rachel uses it for good. Rachel puts a lot of stock in religion, but not as a ploy, but as a guide to, like, this is how you live a good life.
Right.
One of my favorite scenes in the whole movie is when she's sitting out with the shotgun on the porch and he's just standing across the road and singing that hymn. And, I mean, he might be the first, like, creepy boogeyman hymn singing character.
He's trying to disarm her, like, emotionally and literally.
But I feel like when she starts singing along with him, it's not in a, like, hey, here's some common ground. Isn't this nice? It's more of a, I have more of a right to be, like,
they're fighting with each other with it. Yeah.
Right. It's awesome. It's
really
such an
awesome
scene.
Well, and it's also like, just making connections with, kind of present day political rhetoric and how religion is weaponized for a lot of people, especially when it comes to LGBTQ rights and abortion and things like that, where it's just like, you know, things that are taken out of context or, you know, twisting the words completely. And then it's just like, oh, but where in the Bible does it say this, this, and that? You know, it's kind of like you can be truly religious and use it as a true pathway to, you know, being a steward for your community and trying to do better by people and trying to help people, rather than using it to just kind of serve your cause that you're trying to get because you have hate and you want to use it to back up your hate. And so it's kind of an early, you know, 1955 version of like, you know, using religion as a weapon.
I mean,
and the
which
way they do
still,
it is great.
Yeah. And it was definitely being done then. We see it now a lot more for what it is.
Yeah.
At least I would say more people do. But also you have a lot of, and we're talking about politicians and leaders. You do have many, probably more than not, who do, like you said, they use that religion as their guide for living a good life. And they're reading I'm not a religious person, but I know enough to know that the, you know, major religious texts of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam do not preach violence. They might depict violence, and they might depict people with those ideas, but like there's conflict, and ultimately the, you know, protagonists, I guess, of those texts are advocating for justice and for peace.
Yeah.
Versus
Also, interestingly, you know, Rachel has the shotgun, and she could confront him and use it on him many times, but it, you know, and she has the right to bear arms, but she is holding it as purely a defensive tool. If he approaches and puts herself or the children in danger, then she would use it. But she's not going after him and using it. And,
no, nor can she fire like 150 rounds with one pull of the trigger with her shotgun.
Yeah.
Just to kind of...
So, yeah, no, absolutely. But even still, it's like, it's not in her character to be the aggressor. You know, she is, you know, she's the mama bird. She's protecting her eggs.
And she's got an interesting backstory too, that we get hints of it, that she has a son who doesn't talk to her.
Right.
Any for at least a year.
Yeah.
We don't really know what else is going on, except that to have some type of familial connection, takes in these kids.
Yeah.
And
she's
and
great
we don't
to them.
see, we don't get any hint or indication that we shouldn't trust her, or that her intentions are anything but altruistic.
Yeah. Let's talk real quickly about just how gorgeous this movie is. And if you want to kind of bridge that into, you know, Charles Laughton's background in theater, we can absolutely do that. But like, you know, the first thing that I remember, well, first of all, the movie starts off with this very like visceral vision of Rachel, who we don't meet until like an hour into the movie or so. Right. And she's kind of singing this hymn and everything. And that alone is like, it sets it, you know, apart from others visually. But especially when you see like Willa at the bottom of the lake in the car, it's stunning. It looks so incredible.
Willow when she's in the bed before he kills her.
Yeah.
With the light, the way that the light is like spotlighting her and framing her.
Very atypical of movies of that time.
Oh yeah, very much. You know who I bet saw this movie a couple of times before directing a movie a couple of years later would be Mr. Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh, sure, totally.
Especially
Absolutely.
the way that light is used in Psycho, I think about.
Well, the way that this uses light, but also it's like there's movement in the images that isn't very standard, and it's really poetic in a way that is surprising. I mean, I'll say it again, when she's at the bottom of the lake, I just kind of gasped. I was just like, wow, that's amazing. It looks so good. And a lot of what Laughton does reminds me of like, have you watched any of Ty West's movies? Specifically,
Was that
the
the trip,
Pearl,
like the X?
yeah,
Pearl.
X
I
and
have
Pearl.
not.
So Pearl, which takes place, around this time, rural America, and it's a horror movie, and I see a lot of what Charles Laughton is doing in Night of the Hunter in his movies, specifically that one. But I think that, like, especially just the horror in kind of rural America, tucked away where you're not expecting it, but of course there would be something like this going on. Like that, it reminded me a lot of kind of his work. I mean, so many other directors, but that's the one that kind of just came to mind, where it's just like, this could be in a Ty West movie next week and it would fit in perfectly, that kind of a thing. Yeah.
And another, as we're talking about all these other movies that this movie clearly influenced, just to kind of throw it back to another movie that we've talked about here, The Client.
Sure.
There's a lot of the suspense of The Client. Also the actor, there's another case of an actor having to really take on a heavy role, Brad Renfro,
yeah.
for The Client. But yeah, it's the way that it's shot, right? It's very different. You're not looking from that opening shot where it's like Rachel up against the stars. You see the stars surrounding her head, and like, what's going on? Who is this? What are they doing? But it fits. That's it. There's really odd and interesting choices in this movie, and they fit. And as an audience member, you also, like, I wish I could have seen this in a theater. This is a movie that feels like it needs to be shown on film. I don't care how good, I was thinking about it while I was watching this. I don't care how good your home theater is. There's something different about sitting in a movie theater. And this movie, I feel like, man, I really want to watch it in a movie theater, because then I feel like I'd really feel the suspense, the waiting for something to happen, the threat of Powell, when like, he's walking in the house, when Willa hears him asking Pearl about the money, after she hasn't believed that he was doing that, because John's trying to tell her, like, nah, he just wants the money. And when she hears him, and then you're like, oh boy, all right, Shelley Winters, it was good knowing you.
Yeah, I know. It was kind of a shame that she's only in the film for a short period of time.
But she's another scene that's shot really interestingly, and also is a highlight of her performance in this, is when they're both kind of leading the revival meeting. He's preaching and she's giving testimonial. I remember the light being used really interestingly there, and just also seeing her and feeling like there's so much pain in her performance as she's trying so hard to be this preacher's wife.
Right. I know. Ugh.
Just no matter how much, I mean, on their wedding night, when he says, when he's like, nope, your job is to look after the 2 kids you have, not to make more.
Yeah, I know. Ugh, God. And that's also a really interesting part of his character is like, you know, a lot of other movies that would be doing something like this would take that opportunity for the aggressor to have some sort of sexual motive or like, expressing his power over somebody else in that way. And the fact that he doesn't do that makes him even scarier.
That brings up an interesting point, because there's when he goes to the burlesque show or
yeah.
And he wants to kill the stripper. Does he kill the stripper?
I don't think so. That's the one where he has like the knife in his pocket and it like shoots out of his pant pocket.
It's really sexual.
Oh, yeah, not very discreet.
No, and it's another one of those things that I'm like, is this movie, like, is Charles Laughton really that progressive a director? Like, is he really trying to address things like, sexual identity and what is driving this guy?
I don't know enough about Charles Laughton to comment on that. But that definitely warrants some research, I think. Because there's got to be something there. And also, I mean, this was based or adapted from a book. I don't know if there's anything in the book that kind of imparts that, or if that's all Laughton. But a lot of these people in early cinema, 50s cinema, they have things that they want to kind of get in there, but have to kind of do it cleverly.
And it makes me think of Rebel Without a Cause. I think you see that in Rebel Without a Cause.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Among others, but a movie of the same year, in fact, that plays around with a lot of that tension and that, like, well, this is what's expected of me, but I don't know that it's who I am.
Yeah. But also, like, to do it in a horror/thriller like this is, I think more of a new thing, and it's really clever the way that they handle it. But yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, no, it's really, it's scary. It's spooky. Mitchum just plays it. I mean, who is about, like, out, you've got your actors like Boris Karloff who were playing like in all the monster movies and everything. But man, who else could be that terrifying without actually playing a literal monster?
Yeah. No, he's great. And I mean, he's got the right look. He understood the vibe to go for. Clearly they kind of just did it again in Cape Fear. I think it's a little strange that he played such a similar character, but yeah, it's
whatever. Yeah. I mean, I guess a lot of people didn't see this movie at the time.
True.
Yeah. But, so coming back to Charles Laughton, who was definitely primarily had been a stage actor and stage director, but in film, like the Henry VIII movie, I think The Private Life of Henry VIII, he was in that. Mutiny on the Bounty, a lot of the Hunchback of Notre Dame, he was in that. So
gotcha.
lot of films, but I wondered, there was one shot, and I wish I had written down when in the film it was, but you're seeing from a distance, it's a nighttime shot, but these two, I don't know if it's like Rachel's house and like a barn or something, but you're seeing them and it looks like a stage set.
There were a few times where I thought it looked like a stage set.
And I wondered why, because it was so obvious, and I didn't feel like this was a film that needed to do that, or, you know, I felt like something that had to be intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't just like, okay, someone put up a couple of flats and we're going to shoot these things in silhouette and, you know, here, you walk from there to there.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I totally see what you're saying. And I would love to do a little bit more research on Charles Laughton. You know, it's so strange. And of course, yeah, if there's not a big box office draw, then maybe that would explain why he really only directed this one movie. I think he did some like uncredited directorial work on like one other thing, at least according to IMDb, but he was
going to do another movie, but yeah, the reception for this just was
which is too bad. I wish that things weren't based on that kind of thing. I mean, yeah, of course it's a business, it's all numbers, but I think that what you're talking about for Charles Laughton, what?
So maybe make a remake of Back to the Future where he goes back to 1955, but instead of the whole thing with his family, he just goes to find Charles Laughton to tell him like, people are going to love Night of the Hunter eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. Take a detour. Dudes from New Jersey are going to talk about it on a podcast. Don't worry about what that is.
Well, yeah, I mean, but yeah, we're not the first people to praise this movie.
No. Yeah.
So
but also,
you don't know who this is yet, Mr. Laughton, but Martin Scorsese is going to consider this cinema.
Yeah. Guillermo del Toro might sound like nonsense words to you right now, but just you wait. Or actually, you'll never know because you'll be probably long gone. But anyway,
seriously, talk about another filmmaker who you definitely see the influence.
Absolutely, yeah.
Also knows how to do things a little theatrically.
Very true, very true. So yeah, kind of going to the stage like theater look of some of the shots in this. Yeah, I don't know. I was trying to kind of make sense of why those choices would be made thematically. But for me, it was mostly just like, I understand that this is kind of the world that this director comes from. And so in order to achieve some sort of, you know, visual that he has in mind, it's like kind of going into the toolbox that he knows. Because that's the way he can make it look the most effective and impactful and kind of stand out. So I don't know. If you get a different read that makes more sense for like what's going on in the movie, then I'd love to hear it.
No, I really don't know, but it seems way too intentional. And there are so many other choices in this movie that are very different from other films of this era, at least that I'm familiar with. That, yeah, I feel like there's got to be, you know, an intention there more than just like, oh, this will look interesting. I just not sure what that is.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it worked for me just in the sense that like it was all very striking and nothing felt like it was cheapened by doing that. You know, it didn't feel like, out of the movie.
No, it didn't feel like out of the movie. It definitely felt consistent with the movie's vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. And that's the thing is like making, like, it's one thing to make really interesting choices, but you can't do that at the expense of the consistency of the film.
Right.
Which I don't think he does in this case. I think it's all very, even though there's some choices that come out of nowhere, he starts the movie with like floating Lillian Gish in the stars. So already it's kind of, it sets you off with like, all right, I know this means something, but I don't know what it means yet. I probably will by the time it's done.
I know. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dan,
I appreciate that.
Yeah. I'd love to know kind of what would you do to kind of revisit this movie nowadays?
Oh boy, there's so many different thoughts. There was a remake. There was like a made-for-TV remake.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, yeah, nothing.
I didn't seek it out.
No, nor did I. But in terms of just doing a remake, which I don't necessarily know that that's my idea. I was thinking during this, I would love to see what David Lynch would do with it.
Yeah.
He's never necessarily done a remake. Like, he's done adaptations.
Sure.
Certainly. But to see what a filmmaker like David Lynch would do with it. And I'm sure that there are also younger filmmakers. There are several younger filmmakers. I mean, you mentioned Ty West before. Right. You could easily say that like an Ari Aster version of this, a Robert Eggers version would be interesting.
Yeah. Ari Aster, I mean, I think that's an interesting one because clearly somebody who knows how to make a terrifying movie that's all in the daytime.
Yes.
Yes. And Night of the Hunter, even though it's called Night of the Hunter, I think that really just refers to like the final standoff, really. But there's so much of it that's just like, oh, this is menacing 24/7.
Right. And I actually felt, in thinking about Ari Aster, I was thinking more of Hereditary as a film that just has like that tension.
You know, I haven't seen it yet, and I've been meaning to do it, and it just hasn't happened yet.
We'll talk after you do. But
okay.
There's definitely he's a filmmaker among others who, know how to build tension. Now, I'd certainly be interested, but I don't necessarily know that I'd be excited for a remake of this. Right. However, I'm interested. There's history. There's history to these characters, and I don't necessarily know that I need like a Harry Powell prequel.
Right.
On it, like serialized pulp novels.
Sure.
About him, like his. It also reminded me of the Stepfather when they talked about how he, had married and murdered 25 women. Made me think of the movie The Stepfather, based on the true story of John List, who married a woman and got into the family with her and her children and then killed them all. So, which they've already remade that.
Sure.
But it would be interesting to look into that, or like there's probably documentaries out there, but like, I mean, who are the people who are doing this? Are there people who are really doing this?
You mean like con artists who are?
Well, I mean, yeah, clearly there are. I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I think something like that would be interesting. It would be interesting too. And of course, like you mentioned, the political use of the evangelical presence in politics, and kind of using that wolf in sheep's clothing thing. That definitely adds to the relevance of it. But yeah, in terms of like what I would actually do with this movie, as theatrical as the film is, I wouldn't put it on stage. I think generally thrillers kind of lose a lot of steam.
Yeah,
when you put them on stage.
I agree. Yeah.
So I'm not down for that. But what's the backstory? Like Harry Powell, where did he, maybe more about him, or go after this movie and if Harry is institutionalized, like, I'm just interested to know. I almost want to read like a nonfiction case study about this fictional character.
Or what if it was like Harry in hell and he has to like con his way into earning the trust of the devil, you know, like something like that, where it's so bizarre and twisted, but it's like this soul is so demented that there's nothing that can faze him about being in hell.
Now that would work as a play.
That could work as a play, yeah.
Yeah. But
because you can't kill what's already dead. So it's
Right.
not like there's, you know, like a horror kind of a thing, but it's just a psychological journey in the afterlife, in the underworld.
Where he's actually trying to get the devil to trust him, and the devil is just like, yeah, I'll keep that guy away. Like, yeah, he belongs here. We definitely can't get rid of him, but I'm not feeling good about this.
Even this guy's a little cuckoo for hell. Jeez.
Yeah, this guy, like, Adolf, I know it took some time for us, but like, you know, but this guy, 9.
There's something real dark there. Oof.
Well, I'm trying to think of like who would be in hell that the devil would actually like as a friend, and Hitler's kind of the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, just the absolute worst of the worst.
Yeah.
All
right, John, what are you going to do with this?
Well, one of my thoughts was to do something graphic novel-y, but I was thinking, you know, one area that we haven't explored on this podcast in our 250 something episodes that feels very appropriate for this. And, you know, it is, we are on the cusp of autumn. It is still summertime as we release this, but autumn is coming soon. Starting to see all the Halloween decorations, and wouldn't it
Pumpkin
be great
spice
for
is
there?
back.
Pumpkin spice is back. Do it up, cold foam style.
Had to point that out, but go on.
Gotta point it out. And how scary would it be to go to a haunted hayride, haunted house situation that is Night of the Hunter themed? Like an outdoor Halloween, like, you know, jump scare kind of a thing where it's like, I understand Night of the Hunter isn't necessarily the biggest, like, you know, everybody knows about it. It's kind of like a if you know situation, but, you know, you are kind of going down in like a rowboat, and there, you know that you're being chased by somebody who's after like your doll that's stuffed with money, and I don't know. I feel like there's an opportunity to kind of be trying to escape from this, you know, demonic stepfather.
I was thinking it as like a corn maze, and you just hear footsteps and like the hymn singing.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Which that always, like, one of the first horror movies I remember watching was Poltergeist 2.
I was just talking about Poltergeist 2.
I haven't rewatched it in a long time.
Let me tell you why, Dan. Because our current commander-in-chief bears a striking resemblance to Cain.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Anyway,
talk about like the scariest, like, that guy was the scariest horror movie villain for me. Even until now.
Yeah.
And he's got the Harry Powell vibe.
Yeah.
So any of that shit, like a tall, gaunt person singing, especially the way that Mitchum is dressed in this.
Yeah.
If they were just like, this guy is wandering around the corn maze, you don't want him to catch you. Have fun.
He's got trick and treat on his knuckles.
Employ the thumb for that fifth letter.
Yeah, you got to get the thumbs on there.
You got to get the thumb in there. Definitely. But, I thought you were going to say you were going to go as Harry Powell for Halloween.
Nah.
By the way, out of nowhere, I was informed today of what my Halloween costume was going to be.
Oh, you were informed. Okay.
I was informed that my son, 2 years old, is going to be Curious George.
Oh, okay.
Which would, of course, mean that I am going to be the man in the yellow hat.
Yeah, get your yellow hat.
Now, if I could just get a bolo little like tie with that, and I could kind of combine the two.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who's a good monkey for Jesus?
Well, I like it.
Down by the riverside. I don't know.
If you, our dear listeners, have an idea of how you would want to bring back Night of the Hunter, or just want to kind of weigh in, email us, ruinchildhoodspod@gmail.com. Also, please rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. Check us out on YouTube and leave a comment on any of the videos. We've been doing video episodes for quite a while now, so you can kind of watch these episodes. And we had a really fun comment recently. We got a lot of really good ones, but somebody mentioned that they were an extra in the class, the Taekwondo class in the Foot Fist Way, and I need to know more information about that.
Yes.
They said that it was, I believe they said it was a shit show. But
But I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah.
And perhaps,
and I love that people are finding us on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, hey, what's up? Thank you for bearing with us through all of this. We really appreciate you. And
you're a champion.
You're a champion. But Dan, we are so close to wrapping up this year-long series going through the United States. Yeah. Tell us where we're going next.
We are going from West Virginia to Wisconsin. Yep, we're going up to the lakes, and we are going to be checking out The Great Outdoors from 1988, directed by Howard Deutsch, written by John Hughes, starring John Candy, Dan Aykroyd, Annette Bening, and
Robert Prosky.
Robert Prosky is back. Lucy
Bart
Deakins,
the bear.
Bart the bear. Thank you. I was trying to remember the name of the bear. It's Bart.
Dan, before audience, before we recorded, Dan was commenting about looking at his phone to look at notes, and I'm using my phone as my camera, so I don't have that. Bart the bear came from up here in my head.
If you're watching, you know that
Bart the bear, who we have seen before on this podcast in this series. Legends of the Fall. Was it Legends of the Fall or the other Montana one?
Yeah, or maybe he was in both.
No, it was Legends of the Fall, because that's the bear one.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so The Great Outdoors, 1988 comedy.
Yeah.
Gonna lighten it up a little bit.
Howard Deutsch. Yeah, it's going to be a very different vibe from this one. So I'm excited. Dan, I have been having so much fun on this series with you. I can't believe that we're almost at the end of it. Just Wisconsin and Wyoming left. Wow.
It's wacky.
Yeah.
It's wacky.
Yeah. After that, we're going to do kind of a post-mortem discussion of this, and then we're going to go into our next series. Excited to announce that. We'll announce that at the end of our Wyoming episode.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll talk about it a little bit in our wrap-up episode after that.
Yep.
But Dan, as you are rowing down the river with John and Pearl and the doll stuffed with 10K, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.